Today on Wisdom Journey, I'm joined by Paul Comfort, author of Find Your X Factor and a former executive leader who reached the top in three different careers before discovering that success without alignment can still feel empty. Now he helps professionals realign their work with who they are truly built to be. Welcome to the podcast, Paul.
Thank you.
Yeah, you reached the top in multiple careers, government, leadership, transportation, media. On paper, that's massive success. When did you first sense something felt off?
So, thanks for having me on the show. And I have been involved primarily in public transportation for most of my career. And while I was in that career, I felt a pull, as I did when I was younger, into public communication, meaning like mass media. So, even when I was a kid, before I really got into transportation, I was working as a part-time disc jockey at a local radio station as a teenager. When I went to college, I worked at the local radio station. I got a job at the newspaper as a local reporter, all while I was in college and before I actually even started my career. But I always had this pull toward that. And then when I got into transportation, I started a newsletter in my first job. And then as I went through various transportation jobs, I just knew what I loved. The part that made me feel like I was coming alive and using the best of who I was always when I was with people or communicating with them, up on stage, talking with them, mingling with them. And so that's been my love. I'm pretty good at administration and at management and leadership. But the part I really loved was the communication part. And so it wasn't that I necessarily felt anything was wrong. It just felt like my job was not fully aligned with what I loved and what I was good at. And so I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. For many people, building businesses or climbing careers, the goal is freedom and success. What did achievement cost you internally before you understood alignment?
Yeah, so I was able to align in each job I've had somewhat with my interests and abilities. So the core of the X Factor book and this philosophy that I've been teaching for 20 years is that you reach your highest and best good when you find the intersection of your interests, your passions, the things that, light you up, things you work for on the weekends. You'll have time and money to do the things you love on the weekends. When you boil those down to the core and then you intersect them with what you're good at or what you have base skills at. And when you find something that you love doing and you intersect it with something you're good at, that obviously is where you're going to achieve great success. And so that's, I found that in my life is that where I achieved the greatest successes in each of my jobs was, where I was pursuing that. So for instance, when I was a county administrator, meaning the CEO of the local county government, in both counties around Washington, D.C., where I had that position, I was able to start up local cable access channels, TV channels for the local government. And they were very successful. When I was at the MTA, when I was CEO of Baltimore's transit system, I was able to start a FM radio station run by the transit agency. We had 5,000 employees and contractors, $1 billion budget, and I wanted to make sure we were able to be vertically integrated in our communication message to the public in the Baltimore City region. And so I felt like I could not rely on traditional media to do that for us, so we started our own radio station. So these were the areas where I found great success and great fulfillment, kind of living life on purpose.
Well, one of the things I noticed, you push back you push back against the simple advice, follow your passion.
Yeah.
When did you realize passion alone wasn't the answer?
Well, I'll tell you a story, kind of a good illustration of that. When I was younger, and I talk about this in the book some, I had a music band, and we made a record. I wrote a lot of original songs. We toured around this area, around the Maryland area where I live. And I had a good friend Don, who wanted to sing. And he said, Paul, I really want to sing, but he had a terrible voice. I mean, it was awful. He couldn't carry a tune. So I suggested to him nicely, why don't you, if you want to be in music, why don't you pick up guitar, or why don't you become a sound man or a light man? Trying to be nice, and I didn't want to tell him, you don't have a great voice, but he kept pushing and, it wouldn't have worked for him. And that's the problem with that kind of advice, right? Kids get this when they have their high school graduation or their college commencement exercise, follow your dreams. That's okay, but that's only half of the equation. What I have found is that you have to, if you do that, right, let's say you say, well, I want to be an NBA basketball star. Well, obviously the competition for that is very tight, and it's very difficult to break into that world. And so just because you have the desire, you might be 5'8". You know what? You're not going to make it. I can tell you that right off the bat. And, so most likely. So the odds are very, very small. So following only your passion can often lead to great disappointment and discouragement, as the distance between your expectations and your lived reality is wide and broad. The way to bring that closer together is to find the other intersecting vector on this, which is one piece is your interests, your passions, and the other is your abilities. So it's great advice to follow your dreams, but they just need to add and find where they intersect with your abilities, and not just what your mom says you're good at, right? Your mother thinks you're good at everything. We're talking about skill sets where people come to you for advice. Like they may come to you and say, hey, listen, I broke my clock. I can't figure it out. You're mechanical. Can you help me out here? Or my car needs some work. You're mechanical. I'm not very mechanical. Can you help me out here? So, people keep coming to you over and over because you're good at mechanical things. Well, that's one of your abilities. So if you can find an interest, what interests you and your ability, where it intersects, that's a great sweet spot. I've got numerous stories in the book of people who have been able to find that in various different careers, whether it's in law, whether it's in transportation, whether it's in sports or business. And I interviewed these folks, so they actually wrote their own stories, their own vignettes about how they identified this intersection and how it helped them excel at work and made them feel like they were living life on purpose, where they woke up every morning feeling passion for what they were going to do. And they didn't have that Monday morning blues, as they say, oh, I got to go to work. No, they felt like I do in my current job, pretty good to get up on Monday morning and start work.
Oh, one other thing you talk about, is the X factor. What exactly is the X factor, and how did you personally uncover yours?
Yeah. So, I think that the people sometimes, as you talked about earlier, feel a little misaligned. At some point, almost everyone asks the same question: is this really what I was meant to be doing? And for some, it might come early, where the future feels wide open but unclear. For others, it might arrive mid-career, when your work has become just a paycheck. You're just working for the weekends. Success feels hollow. Life no longer resembles what you were hoping for. And for many, it simply sounds like a persistent question that won't go away. What's next? So this X factor is a practical framework for uncovering that powerful intersection of what energizes you and what you've been built to do well. That is your X factor, the place where your purpose comes together, your effort turns to flow, and work begins to fuel rather than drain you. And so the book, and I've got a special gift for all your listeners at the end. I'll tell you where you can go, and you can actually take an assessment to figure out what is your X factor.
Well, you talk about this X factor. Was it something dramatic for you, or was it? How did you start noticing patterns from earlier in your own life?
Yeah, good question. Thank you. So for me, it was a slower process. It wasn't a sudden, realization, but it was. And what I encourage everyone to do is to take some time to be quiet with yourself. This process is not about starting over. It's about uncovering what's been there all along. So that means you have to do some introspection. And a lot of people aren't good at that. A lot of people don't like to take time to be alone with their thoughts. But you need to do that in order to find your X factor, I believe, because you really need to take, and you could do it in a couple hours. It doesn't have to be a 2-week process, but you could figure out, you sit down on your Saturday, turn everything off, the TV, the music, the noise, the interruptions, and just sit quietly and analyze what do I love? What are my hobbies? And then try to boil them down to what's really behind them. What ties these different interests you have together? Maybe you really enjoy volunteering, at a Girl Scouts troop. If you're a woman who likes to volunteer with young girls and help them, learn sewing or learn whatever the skill sets you're working on. And so you find, I find fulfillment in doing that. I volunteer to do it. I don't get paid for it. And you can try to figure out, what is it about teaching other young women how to sew or how to be a homemaker or whatever they teach in the class you're volunteering for. Try to boil that down to, is it that I like passing on the wisdom? Maybe you're in a phase of your life where you're over 50, and really after that, you start thinking about passing on to the next generation, good skills, good traits, character and skills and things like that. And then you write all them down and you analyze what are these interests and why am I interested in them? And then you do the same thing on your abilities. What do people come to you for? And as I mentioned,
Hey, quick break. Before we continue, I'd love for you to join the Wisdom Journey newsletter. Every week, I share exclusive insights, tools, and behind-the-scenes updates to help you stay ahead in your own journey of building an online business. It's simple, practical, and built to help you grow. Sign up today for free at the link in the description. Now, let's get back to the episode.
If your listeners will go to my website, findyourxfactor.ai, findyourxfactor.ai, there's a free assessment on that page. And you can go through this exercise yourself. And it involves you spending some time thinking, but I've got the prompts, which will help you do that. So it is a way to kind of follow your own personal treasure map to purpose, because I believe where those two intersect, that's your purpose in life. You will be centered on what your purpose is when you find your passion where it intersects with your ability. That is the X factor. That's why it's an X. One's going one direction, one's going the other, and it's like a treasure map where X marks the spot of the treasure.
Wow. You talk a lot about the hidden life patterns that reveal purpose. Looking back, what were the clues in your own journey that you almost missed?
Yeah, I'm not that great at a lot of introspection, to be honest with you. I'm always about what's next, and I don't spend a lot of time analyzing the past, but I think it's critical to do that. I did it today. I had breakfast with a friend, and we were talking about experiences that we'd had together, and we went back and we talked about what have we learned from those experiences, the good and the bad that came from them. These were experiences we had working in government, and we both had worked in the same government, and we had shared experiences, and so we talked about them. And so I think that's, a lot of us lay in bed at night and we ruminate about the things that happened during the day. What could I have learned? What could I have done differently? How could I have gotten a better outcome? But sometimes those patterns don't become clear until later on, when you've been given time to kind of let them settle in your spirit or in your soul, and then you can evaluate them. But that's what's required. I think what's required is that you've got to take some time to kind of uncover what's been there all along inside of you. You have things that you're naturally good at and things that you're naturally drawn to. Finding those two and analyzing them, writing them down is what I would hope you would do, and then circling the ones that intersect. And where can I do that? So, for instance, I'll give you an example. One of the guys in the book, his name is Noah. Noah lives in Boston, and he runs a public transportation system just outside of Boston. But what his real passion his whole life has been art. He always been interested in art, even like the art of bus schedules, and how that some of them have been drawn really artfully. And he liked music, and he liked the arts and painting and all that. So as the head of his transit agency called MEVA, the Merrimack Valley Transit Agency, he's been able to bring both of those together. He's put colorful painted pianos in some of the bus stations so that people can play piano while they're waiting for the bus or the train coming through. And he's had the buses painted brilliant colors and let young people do paintings and then put them on bus wraps and put them on the buses. And he's painted murals on the walls of their stations, and he's brought art in a big way into his transit agency. So he found a way to bring in his interests into what his skill sets was. His skill set's always been public transportation and running, and been involved in that. And so he found a way to bring those two things together, and now he feels happy and fulfilled because what he's good at is intersecting or combining with what he's interested in, the arts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's making sense. A lot of people listening are building online brands or businesses, and identity can get wrapped up in titles and income. How do job titles and public success trap people?
Yeah, well, I think some people get trapped if they're in a job that is, that makes a lot of money, or makes, a significant amount of money. They don't want to leave that job because even if they're not really happy there, because they may not be able to get another job. So you can feel trapped there, I think. And what I would encourage you to do is to look for opportunities in your current job then where you could use some of your skills. For example, I used to run a call center in Washington, D.C. for a transportation operation. We had reservationists, schedulers, dispatchers in this room, and I was in charge of it. And, it was okay. I didn't mind doing it. But what I really love is talking to groups of people. And so I volunteered to do the new employee orientation. It was a way for me to fulfill and do what fulfills me inside by standing in front of a group of people and talking to them about our agency and our programs and our services, and basically, doing training from the front of a classroom in front of 20 or 30 people every week. We'd have a new group of employees come in. So I'd be there for most of the day training them. And I love doing that. And so I was able to combine what I love with what I was currently doing, which was okay. I was good at it, but there were parts of it that weren't as fulfilling as others. And so I found something that was fulfilling that I could marry into what I was currently doing. So that's what I encourage people to do who feel like they might be trapped in their job, is to look for things you can do in that job to fulfill you, and then look for the learning from it. I've even got a chapter in my book, which comes out August 11th, by the way, around the world on Amazon and other places. And it, Barnes & Noble and Target and Walmart, they're all carrying it. It's up for pre-order right now. You can pre-order the book online. But in that book, I tell those stories, and there are lessons learned from people who did just that, where they were able to find things they could do in their current job. I wrote a chapter called When You Hate Your Job, about a job that I did really hate and what I learned from it and how I was able to find meaning and value in it. So if you do feel trapped, there is hope, and it's in the book.
Oh, a different way of saying it is, a lot of people fear that one of the fear they have is that changing direction means starting over. How can someone pivot toward alignment without burning down their life or business?
Yeah, that's right. It's kind of what I was just talking about, wasn't it? So I think the way to do that is to find opportunities to volunteer for things at work where you have either the ability, if you feel like you're not using all your abilities, or you have an interest, if you feel like it's not really scratching the itch of what you love to do. Let's say, for instance, like in my case, I love music. I played piano, like I mentioned, when I was younger. I still play piano, but when I was younger, music was more important to me when I was in my 20s. And so when I got my first job, I worked doing transportation for what they call an office on aging, which was helping the elderly people. We had senior centers, and we would take them to the doctors and things like that. And so I love playing piano, and I love playing piano for other people. And so I found a way to mix it into my current job. And the way I did it was, around the holidays, I'd play Christmas music in the senior centers. We would sing Christmas carols. At other times, we would just play, old standards, and people would sing with them in the senior center. So I figured out how to integrate my music into my current job. You just have to look for the opportunity.
Look for the opportunity. Oh, the whole idea what you talk about is self-actualization. It sounds philosophical. What does it actually look like on a normal Tuesday?
It looks like doing what you're paid to do, and then asking for opportunities to do what you love to do. And so there usually are opportunities. Most employers are happy and actually are excited when someone offers to do more than the minimum duties of their job. And sometimes you can even get a promotion or a transfer to another assignment, which will be more to your liking. And let's take it outside of the work context and just put it in your day-to-day life. There could be things that you want to do that you're passionate about, hobbies you have, and you don't make time to fulfill them. You come home and instead you sit down in front of the TV, or you go outside and hang out with your friends, and you don't really work on improving yourself. My dad always taught me that, Paul, you've got to constantly be improving yourself. And so that's what I would encourage you to do. If you have an area where you have an interest, you should work on improving yourself in that area. That's how you can find your X factor and your purpose. Let's say my friend Don, who wanted to sing, he had an awful voice, but maybe he could have taken singing lessons, right? Maybe he could have improved to the point where he actually could sing in a band or in public without being embarrassed. And so that's what I would encourage you to do, that even outside of work, in your home life, work on improving your skill sets and work on improving the skill sets that interline with your interests. And you may find an opportunity for work in that area to make money, even if it's just a side job. Maybe you don't do it full time to start with. You do it as a hobby, and then maybe someone pays you to do it, and you can find ways. But you have to be aggressive. You have to be the author of your own life. Some people feel like, well, I don't have a lot of opportunity. I don't have a silver spoon in my mouth, so to speak. Yeah, you may not, but you can look for opportunities and be aggressive in trying to, fulfill your life. We're only given one life right now, and we need to make the most of it. And so continue to improve yourself in the areas where you're interested in and you want to know more.
Wow. And a final question would be, if you could speak to someone who feels stuck, successful on the outside, or quietly restless inside, what would you tell them about the risk of staying misaligned?
Yeah, is that you will end up, in what they call a midlife crisis, most likely, right? So that midlife crisis is you get into your 40s and you realize, holy cow, this isn't what I wanted. I wasn't planning to do this. What happened to the dreams I had when I was a young person? And it's that distance I talked about earlier, that discouragement that comes in when your lived reality is not what you had hoped for. And so the cavalry is not coming to the rescue. In most cases, you have to make your own life matter. You have to make your own life what you want it to be. You have to be the author of your own life. And that means analyzing exactly what it is that you're interested in, figuring out what it is you're good at or what you can get better at, and then work on putting those two together. And you do that in your personal life, I suggest, as well as in your professional life, and try to live an integrated life, is what I call it, where you are living your values, you're living your abilities, you're living your skills, you're living your interests. And the closer you get to doing that, the closer you get to finding your X factor. And that's what this talk is all about today. And one way you can do that for free, no charge, no obligation, is simply to go to findyourxfactor.ai. And you can take the little test that's there, a little assessment, and it'll help you walk through these even before the book's out. The book doesn't come out till August 11th, but this is available for you right now. And then if you were interested in getting the book, you can pre-order it online right now, anywhere in the world. On August 11th, it'll be shipped to you, and you can then read more about it. It's a 250-page book. There's a lot of great information in it, a lot of great stories, a lot of great illustrations, and a lot of great exercises. It's not just didactic teaching. It's actually some exercises at the end of each chapter that you can do to work on coming to that place where you feel like you're living your life on purpose.
Wow. Thank you so much for that advice. I will put the links mentioned in the description so the listeners can click and go directly to those sites and assessments. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, Paul. Thank you for talking about the X factor and alignment.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into Wisdom Journey. I hope today's episode gave you practical steps and fresh ideas to keep moving forward. If you found value, be sure to subscribe and share this podcast with a fellow creator or entrepreneur who'd love to learn too. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter and the link in the description for more resources, experiments, and lessons straight to your inbox. Until next time, keep building, keep learning, and keep walking your own wisdom journey. Yeah.